So this week we're dealing with the growth engine. Now, I love airplanes, so you'll forgive me. My thought process this week is around the turbines of airplanes. And that's simply because those engines, first of all, are so powerful and they rev so high, but they are a plethora of components put together that must work or we're in trouble. Imagine you're at 35,000 feet and you lose not just one, but both engines for twin engine crafts, or you lose four engines. Now, if you're like me and you like to watch air crash investigation, I don't know how many people do, you find that planes can fly on even as little as one engine, depending on the skill of the pilot and depending on how high they are. But every time the plane loses an engine, it has to descend. And then when a plane loses all engines, it needs to descend even further. And there is a way it can glide for at least 5 to 6 kilometers. So, depending on how far out they are from the airport or from land, they can find a landing strip. And one of the stories I love the best is the landing on the Pontiac River. This was a plane that had just taken off. It was fully loaded with fuel, and they had bird strikes in all their engines, and they lost all their engines. And so they could not get to any of the nearby airports. Even they couldn't even turn to get back to where they took off from. So the pilot and his co-pilot, what they had to do is land this massive thing, either land it safely or crash. And they were able to glide it as long as they could, and they actually landed in the Pontiac River in the US in winter, so that water was absolutely cold. And it was one of the few, if not the only accident that they recovered the full craft. Nothing fell apart. It just landed, bounced on the water a little bit, and glided to a stop. It was all considered miraculous because of the weight of the plane and the fact that it was a water landing. The other thing that saved passengers is that the ferry services around were quickly mobilized. When the Mayday call was given and the airport lost sight of them and lost connection to them, they had people calling in and saying they've landed in the river, and the ferries were able to pick up the people. A couple of people were injured, some got hypothermia because of the cold water, but they made it to the other side. So, in reference to that, the growth engine is how do you keep your system running and afloat no matter what you come into contact with. So, that's the mindset I want you to maintain as we proceed. So, by the end of it, we'll understand how product and team feedback loops fuel growth. We will have some simple techniques, and we will explore how failure and iteration drive refinement and innovation. Remember, we're in the ideation stage. So we've done ideation, we figured out what we're doing, and now we're at the stage where we're testing with our markets, whether it's a service, whether it's a product, whether it's a tweak on an existing service or product. What we're doing in this space is adjusting. We're turning the dial. We're reorganizing for our communities. All right. So to recap, last time we said co-creation turns users into customers. It builds more relevant, trusted, and sustainable solutions. It's all about asking the right questions, not just asking questions, but asking the right questions and listening curiously. It's about the willingness to let others input and shape the outcome. Because what we're looking for is to collaboratively fuel innovation, and we're looking for the best practices, strategies, and improvements. Because at the end of the day, we deliver to our customers because we answer and we respond to an existing real problem that is recurring, and people are willing and able to pay. We answer real problems that are recurring, and people are willing and able to pay for. So, starting with that premise, we will jump into a reflection. So, it says perfection is the enemy of progress. Why do you think we say that? And I will be looking for some responses in the chat, or if you have a short answer, you can raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute. Perfection is the enemy of progress. Why do you think we say that? Some responses. Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Hello, good evening.
Evening.
I think perfection is the enemy of progress because to perfect something, you take time. And with perfection, everything has to be right, everything has to be in place. And sometimes for progress to happen, it doesn't need perfection. It just needs you to take the step in the right direction with what you have at that moment. And as you move, you continue perfecting.
Excellent. That is true. In the chat, we have Mbide who says we can get stuck while waiting to reach perfection. And that's really why perfection is the enemy of progress. We get stuck in our heads, eh? Oh, it's not working perfectly. Remember, we said when we're doing the ideation sessions that get a minimum viable product, get an MVP, get an MVS, a minimum viable service, deploy. Go to the market and say, okay, you guys said this is your problem. Here's our potential solution. And allow people to give you feedback, which will help you iterate and meet their need exactly. Many of us as MSME leaders, entrepreneurs, founders, we get stuck in building the perfect product. And by the time the product or service is ready, the market has moved on. They've gone and they're done. I've just been reading a piece on LinkedIn about why big brands struggle in East Africa. And some of the biggest reasons they struggle is because they don't take in the whole cultural issue. Most of us buy we buy less by how much is on the shelf, we buy more by recognition. So I heard from Beatrice, this product is amazing, I'll go and try it. And then because I love it, I will tell Bernard, yeah, you must try this product. And because he loves it, he'll tell Grace. And because Grace loves it, she'll tell Linda. And that is how we buy. We're very relational with our products. Sometimes, depending on where you're located, the audience could be price sensitive. So if we're just looking at perfection and what we think the audience wants, then we get stuck because we don't move. So today we'll be unlocking the power of feedback. It's the natural outcome of co-creation. Remember, co-creation meant we go back and look and pick a few people in our audience, in our user groups, and allow them to have a say on what we're building. Because this is where ideas are refined and resilience is built. And we shall see why resilience is built. So feedback matters because it is the test phase of how to move human-centered design from the idea and assumption to validation. So we have thought, okay, people want greener cars, all right? People want to buy electric cars. And then we come to the market, we make up this product and we must market it. And then there's little uptake because of the cost of it. Or you could find a whole quadrant of the market says, but oh, the lithium batteries, we cannot redispose them. So we've built something that will be more difficult to sell. If we had taken time to understand what is the problem, then I remember we're part of a challenge with Joe, was a hydrogen challenge. And the question was, what can we do with hydrogen? And there's all this conversation of hydrogen cars, hydrogen buses. But the fundamental question we kept asking the innovators is, does your audience even understand that hydrogen can be a fuel? So maybe the innovation needed to be around sensitization of hydrogen as a fuel before you even begin to build the hydrogen vehicles or adapt vehicles for hydrogen. Think of the cars that now drive on LPG. Some of you have seen it in the Ubers. They run both on fuel and LPG. It was slow picking up, but LPG runs faster, is more fuel efficient. And I'll give an example. I had a cabbie who we were using his based in Nairobi. We're going to Nakuru. We needed somebody to go there, stay with us, and run around. It was easy to pick somebody from Nairobi. And the day we're leaving, he was late. I was in an event. My boss at the time was leaving with him, and he didn't get time to fuel. But his LPG tank was full. So he drove all the way to Nakuru, ran all our errands in Nakuru, and then on the way back is when we fueled. So we're paying him fuel per day. We don't know that he's running on LPG, and the LPG tank, full tank, was 3,500. So whereas we've paid for him fuel like 10K because of all the stuff we're going to do, he actually spent under 5 on fuel, which was a win to him. How do I know that? He's a friend of mine. So later on, after we have paid him and he's happy, he tells me, by the way, this I made my savings. When they first introduced LPG, we're all thinking it will explode. It is cooking gas. But there are modifications they had made to the engines. Why did that resonate and work with the drivers? Because it helped them lower their costs and it helped them make a better return on their Ubers. So the conversation between the guys who were doing the conversions and adaptations of engines revealed that the gap was around excessively high fuel prices impacting the capacity of Uber drivers to make the amount they used to make, which then necessitated them to test the use of adapting engines to LPG. However, let's look at usability issues. There are certain models of cars that you cannot make that conversion. All right. So then there were people in the ecosystem. I had two friends. One, his car was adjustable, the other wasn't. So the other was not very happy because his fuel prices remained high. All this is built on feedback because feedback reveals your gaps, it reveals usability issues. It also unmasks unmet needs or partly met needs. Many times we're looking for unmet. So we need to look for the partly satisfied, partly met. And that becomes the thing we innovate and iterate around. Because remember, we're selling to meet and to answer a problem that is recurring, and it is recurring in real time, and people are willing and able to pay for it. All right. So that's why we need that relentless loop. So, what are practical things we can do to get feedback? We've said this before, so I will not spend too much time here. Observe, don't lead. We have to be watching behaviors before we interpret words. You know, words can mean one thing when just listened to, and words can mean a totally different thing when we watch how they're said. All right. So let's make sure that observation is a critical part of everything we do. If you're running teams, watch how they respond to additional work, late meetings, watch how they respond to new projects that are seemingly outside their wheelhouse. Watch how they respond to new team members, whether their peers or their seniors, all right? Ask open-ended questions. Very often, many of us look at yes or no questions, but how about things like, tell me what you expected here? What was the most difficult thing that happened in the process? What do you wish worked better? What do you wish did not exist? And they will tell you, and as they are telling you the stories of what worked, what didn't work, be keen to observe. We must look at the nonverbal cues. We must look at body language, gestures. I think the one I love the most is facial expressions. Sometimes I want to be able to see people's eyes because the eyes don't lie. You know, there are those guys you can see that flicker of disdain, disgust, or that flicker of absolute excitement, but they don't want you to feel so good about it, so they calm themselves down. So you observe, you ask open questions, and then you have short, regular tests. So come back every so often. Maybe not test the whole process or the whole service line, test layer by layer, level by level. What that does, it allows you to uncover 80% of the problems at hand. or 80% of what people like. And I don't know if you've noticed, for those of us who do training, when you give a long-winded feedback form, people don't feel it. They open, they're like, 15 questions, what's the point? Now, I recently went for a training where filling your feedback form is what unlocked the next level. And that feedback form was long. It was like 14 questions. But because we knew we would not get the next level without filling that form, and our facilitator was watching us in real time, she had her laptop open so she was able to see who has filled. That's what kept us answering the forms. And then from there, we're giving another assignment. When you finish, you get the next one. So little bits that were able to help them unlock real realities. And inside there is where we put all our pains so that they're responding to them. And then focus on actions and not opinions. Again, behavior is an insight. The one thing we cannot go wrong as product or service deliverers is behavior observation. We must make it the thing we do. Let us observe how people respond, because in there is their truth. I don't know if you remember how babies' faces scrunch when you give them medicine as opposed to how you give them something sweet, or when you give them a lemon as opposed to an orange. That will tell you this one will not eat. So there was one baby I was around who was given a lemon and they were sucking on it like it was an orange. Now, it was interesting to watch now the child's mother, because she was expecting a different response. But there was her baby happily sucking on a lemon, and she's like, what is wrong with this child? Nothing wrong. They just have a different palate and they're able to take more tart. But when she gave her the orange, you could see the little girl preferred the tartness of the lemon. And we were all very fascinated about that because we thought, that's a bit weird. But what we did at the end of the day is just made sure that she was able to have whatever citrus she enjoyed. So observe, don't take lead, don't assume anything, focus on actions, do short regular tests, and ask open-ended questions. And when you get that information, again, we're talking about a relentless loop, which means every time you receive information, we are iterating with that information. We are adjusting, we are improving. We are doing small continuous tweaks, because as we tweak on those small levels, remember we've done 5 short tests, we've done 5 short conversations. As we tweak on those little things, we come and add them into the system. What happens is if they were holes, we are patching more every time and we can build a complete solution. Because feedback and iteration give you sustainable growth. If you look at some of the big brands or even the small brands that have crashed, it's because they've been unable to maintain that journey. Receiving feedback, iterate. Receive feedback, iterate. Go back to the market, iterate. And what you have is customers who are loyal. I will use Safaricom as an example, our local telco. When Safaricom first started in the early 2000s, it was purely voice and text, purely. Over time, as the needs of the market has changed, as the world is shifting, data came in. All right. And then we continued the shift. And then there's a large unbanked population. So M-Pesa came in. After a while of running M-Pesa, they began M-Shwari. So M-Pesa is mobile money. M-Shwari is mobile savings. And then after a while, they started Fuliza. So Fuliza is a loan facility. What most of us don't understand is Fuliza was started because of the need of the market, men and women. So they go to the market at 5 o'clock in the morning. They need 10,000 shillings. They will buy stock and offload a lot of it by the evening, and then they will pay back. So the initial structure of Fuliza was you borrow in the morning, you pay by evening. When it was like that, the people who took money more were the traders. And then they realized that traders are only a small population of Kenya. So they began a system where you could take money and then you get 30 days to pay. Now, when they moved to the 30 days to pay, of course, their lending base increased. That was also about the time there was the rise of the online lending apps, and we know that the history on that one. They are very aggressive. They thrive on embarrassing people. So what M-Pesa did with their M-Shwari is, sorry, with their Fuliza is after 30 days, if you've not paid, they just shut down your M-Pesa until you pay. And that has evolved, and your limit evolves based on the number of transactions you have and the amount of money through your phone. So whereas some people, the limit is 500 shillings, there are people whose limit is over 15,000, purely based on the amount of money that transacts through your phone. KCB have the same loan platform. And what is this that these telcos and banks are doing? They are adapting to the need of the populace to have access to microloans. However, the interest on these microloans is high. But because they're so easily available, because they answer the immediate need, what they are doing is that people are consistently staying inside there. So it's a relentless feedback loop because every day offers you a new insight, and that new insight will help you improve your product. And when you improve your product, you can sell more, and it's rinse and repeat as we continue going. So, what is the hardest part of getting feedback about your product? I'd like to hear from one or two people. What is the hardest part about getting feedback on your product? You can put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. What is the hardest part about getting feedback on your product or service? If you're in the service sector, what's the hardest part about getting feedback on your service? Any takers? You can raise your hand, or you can. Yes, Andrew, please be brief.
I think the first thing for me I've noticed is to disconnect the feedback as a personal attack and from actual feedback to improve the process or behavior that is lacking. Because
So
sometimes it
disconnect
looks
your
like
emotions from the feedback.
correct.
That's a big one. That's a big one. Somebody else? How many of us struggle like Andrew? Andrew, please disconnect your transcription app kindly. We do not allow those in this space. Kindly disconnect your transcription app. All right. I see too busy hustling to listen. That's another big one. That's another big one. We're so busy selling that we're not collecting feedback. You know, some of the easiest ways to do feedback is to see what is selling more than the other. Have you ever bought, so I'll go back, I like the market. So I would see my women in the market buying this week, they have a lot of tomatoes, and then next week they have few, and you're like, why your tomatoes issuing early? They're like, they're not going as fast. So I'm like, do you know why? And some of them are like, I don't know. It's just the season. I'm like, no. So you ask your customers why. And that is where we go wrong. So lack of a feedback collection mechanism. Thank you. That is also another big one. So because feedback is the growth engine, because it is the space that we will collect the information we need, we have to, in one way or the other, have a feedback mechanism. So let's look at our teams. We've looked at the product perspective, but let's look at our teams. How do we give and receive feedback? There is what we call the SBI model that we like to use. And it is simply the situation, when and where did this thing happen, the behavior, what was said or done, and then the impact, how did it affect others? I see that the other challenge, the hardest thing about feedback is not considering it as an essential part of the process. Excellent, fantastic. So in this model, we love it because it gives us a simple structure of how we will collect the feedback. And here's an example. In Monday's meeting, that is the situation. When you cut me off mid-sentence, that is the behavior, I felt disregarded and lost momentum. Now, this is allowing the person speaking to you or the person you are speaking to be absolutely clear. So what does it take out? It takes out inconsistencies and it takes out assumptions. The reason it has to be so specific is to counter, remember the one of how we need to remove our emotions from the feedback? So it could be, and I'll give an example of a product I bought last week or the week before. I bought 2 sunscreens. I bought 2 small sunscreens, I think about 60 grams each, but they gave me 1 big one. And what the person who was packing looked at was the price. It is 2 at X. So they just looked at the total price there. They didn't look at the number and they packed the big one. So when I was talking to my supplier, the lady who I buy from, I was like, I just need you to know that when my product arrived today, I discovered it was the wrong size and I didn't check the delivery because I was in session. It was last week, Tuesday. I was in session when it arrived. In that way, then she's like, but it was not, the size was not determined. So then I went back to my order. I did a screenshot. I said, here it says sunscreen times 2, and that is the price. So what the person did is they looked at price, they didn't look at quantity. And what you try to do is you try to give feedback as soon as possible. That's why we say keep it timely and specific. And you're focusing on the behavior, not the personality. So we're not saying things like, you always make me feel bad. No, no, no. It's very specific. In the Monday meeting, when you cut me off mid-sentence, I felt disregarded and momentum. Not every time you cut me off, now we are coming at me, as opposed to, this is the situation, this is the day. One of the things we must do is we must receive feedback with maturity. And it goes back to the conversation of separating feedback from our personalities. And this is a place of growth for every human being, specifically leaders. Many of us hear feedback and critique as a personal attack, as opposed to an opportunity for growth. So we go wrong because I want to hear what Audrey say so that I defend my reputation, as opposed to trying to understand where is Audrey coming from? What did she experience that had her uncomfortable, and how can we resolve the situation? All right. And then instead of taking it personally, this is back in front of us, ask questions. Remember last week when we were talking about co-creation, we said, ask the right questions. So here, our popular question would be, what did you prefer? What was missed in your order? How did we disappoint you? And I remember we went out for coffee with my son over the weekend, and he is lactose intolerant. And we were very clear that it was either going to be almond milk, oat, soy, whatever it is, an alternative milk. When it came and he drank it, we realized it was milk. So we asked what the order was. And we had thankfully been served by the manager, and they said, Yoni Kazia, managers who took that order, let me ask them when they come. So when the manager comes and she's asked, she says, I said make with oat milk. The barista had make with hot milk. So it was a mother tongue interference, how the manager phrased it when she made the order. What did she do? She quickly went back to the station, made a fresh drink for my son. Of course, it had to be a compensation, but she was terrified because she understands allergies and she understands the impact of an allergic reaction in the establishment with her on duty. We could hear her talking to her staff because we were sitting quite close to the station. And she was asking questions of, when I ordered this, what did you hear? Not that you took the wrong order, you didn't. No. She was very calm about it. And she listened to her team member the same way she had listened to us as we lodged our complaint. And then she came back, and when we said thank you and it's okay, she was like, thank you for understanding. Why? It takes a lot to feed back. The average customer feeds back with their feet. They walk away. They just go. So you wonder, we used to sell 300 pieces a month. Now we're down to 150, or we're down to 220. And you need to go back and see which customers are no longer consistent. Where have they gone? In fact, my nail tech was making me laugh the other day. She said, you come here too rarely. So now I have to mark your days. What is she doing? She's trying to make sure she convinces me to come before the 8 weeks I like waiting for. And she told me, be expecting my call at 6 weeks. This thing of 8 weeks, we're not doing anymore. My kinyozi, my barber, says the same thing. Why? Because I get comfortable. And it's like this thing of coming once every 6 weeks, you will stop. So now he marks and he calls me at the 4-week mark. But then they also have tried to understand why I do those cycles. So in that, it has given them ideas on how to make me come more often. Like now, I've already been promised that I will be polished the color I want in the patterns I want. We will not be negotiating. So of course, I'll go earlier. So those are the things you're looking at. You have to understand that feedback is not a personal attack. It is not a personal attack. What it is somebody telling you what they did not enjoy and how that thing, if fixed, would make them a more consistent customer. And you see, very many times we perceive feedback as failure on our part. It may or may not be failure. It could be a part of the process failed. But when something doesn't work, understand you are not a failure. It is the process that failed. It is how we understood our client that was not up to par. So what we must do is learn to shift and not blame individuals, which is the default and the easy thing to do. It is learning to embrace every challenge as a classroom. So you choose to consistently have postmortems or evaluations, and you look for lessons that you can apply. When I listen to feedback on these sessions, I'm listening from the lens of what didn't work, what worked. All right? I'm creating a space where the focus is on what to fix, not who to blame. So it's easy for somebody to say, I didn't understand that. I'm like, you are not listening. That could be an easy response. Think about us and our teenagers when we start fighting. The default is to say these teenagers are lazy, they don't listen, and we go on a triad. As opposed to asking ourselves, was I clear? So many times when I'm sitting with my teens, I'm like, does that make sense? Am I clear? Do you need clarification? Do you have a question? It's taken us a long time to build, but now they know that the space we function in is a safe space. So you're focusing on fixing as opposed to blaming. And then we must understand growth comes when the team talks honestly about what doesn't work. Let's say you have a team and some people are morning persons, some are evening people, and you're forcing everybody to come in the morning. This is how flexi hours developed, because it was the recognition of some people, especially us creatives, we work well at night. I used to be a 3 a.m. to 10 a.m. sleeper, because at 10 p.m., it's like my mind thinks it's morning. The engine revs and I cannot shut off the rev. So what did I learn to do? I learned to work with my mind when my mind is open. Okay? So I needed my 7 hours of sleep. My mind, but then it was shut at 2:50. So I have 10 minutes. I'll be in bed and asleep by 3. I had that flexibility because I have worked remotely for 25 years now, for 15 years now. So I've worked remotely for 15 years, for about 10 years. I've worked remotely for 15 years. So then what I would agree with my clients is time of delivery. And my delivery time was never before 12 noon. I prefer to do my meetings late morning because I'm doing other things in the morning. I would not tell them I was asleep. However, what I would do, and thank God for Gmail when they put in the scheduling thingy, because now I could be working until 3, schedule these things, emails and responses and ideas and stuff to go out at 9. And I know by the time I'm back online at 11, there is feedback, there's responses, I'm lucid, I'm at my desk, I'm working. And that I learned because my teams were like, your time frames are not working for us. So I made the adjustments. So when my teams got up and got to their desks at 8, there was work to do, there were responses, there was stuff to review. And by the time they reviewed and done, I'm back online at 11. And you see, when we choose to learn from failure, we then make sure that nothing in life is a loss. Everything is a win or a lesson. And that for us as a team has become very profound. We have wins and lessons, we do not have losses. So, do we have questions? I will open the floor for questions. You can drop them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and we will allow you to unmute. Do we have questions before we close? I can see a comment in the chat. Oh, I expanded it there. Do we have questions or reflections? What has stood out for you? It is how regular people give feedback by attacking personality. So we think it's a personal attack, especially by older family members or adults when we are younger. Only with exposure to a coach giving the correct way of giving feedback is when we start the journey. That is very true. And then we become change makers. We become the ones who teach people how to give alternate feedback. Do we have questions? Do we have responses? Where do you feel? Where are you in this journey of feedbacking? All right. It's Daktari. I was about to call you up. So, Dr. Lorna.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I think the story that you have shared, and this is what I really like about the way you teach us, like taking us, you share with us through story. The story that you've shared of your son and the order that was taken. I think sometimes we don't take time to understand why what we have asked for is not what we have been given. There's always that quick reaction, blame and blame and blame. So just seeing how the manager responded to your request, and then also the way your manager, the manager spoke to her staff is also really key, because it is eye-opening to understand that it is important to know what the person heard when we speak. What does the other person hear? because depending on the mood they're in or their frame of mind or whatever may be going on around them emotionally, there are things that they may not get clearly. So for the manager to clarify, I think that is something very profound for me on what you have shared. So it is something that I also now need to put more into practice, because just as you shared, the default button is always blame, blame, blame. That's what comes first. But getting to learn that it is important to also understand the perspective from the other end will help us to be able to deal well with our clients, with our customers. And this helps us also to build our businesses in ways that others may also now want to come and find out what is it that you're doing differently, that things seem to be working the right way for you as compared to our side. So I truly appreciate that insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. You brought to mind something else. How do we give feedback in matatus? Matatus for Bernard, our South African brother, and our other non-Kenyans are the equivalent of your taxis. Therefore, the 14-seater, we have 33 seaters. But specifically, Ukingianganya, when you get into Anganya, now for our international delegates, these ones are 33 seaters. They are big. They have sound music systems for complete discos, including the lights. You are inside a club on wheels. And then they tell you if the music is too loud, you are old. And then you get in and you complain about the music. First of all, why did you get in there? But have you noticed that when you deal with the conductors kindly, you disarm them? And that is how people feel on our end when we are kind to them and we're listening to their feedback. Let's ask Linda, your hand was up briefly when Dr. Lorna unmuted. Do you still have your comment? Before I go to Andrew. Linda? She has dropped. All right. Andrew, go ahead.
Yes, by the way, you're so right. And I thank you for giving that, I would say, perfect example. And I'm still laughing about oat milk and hot milk. I think we take for granted, can I say, miscommunication and how easily it happens. And I think it's very humbling, being around coaches who can point out gaps in behavior, and especially around culture, because sometimes it's difficult to unpack maybe why, for example, for a long time I used to not listen feedback from regular people because they would come with a personal attack. And then on top of that, you don't listen, you don't do this, And then also in some particular aspects, depending on the scenario, sometimes women might say, men are not listening, or you as a man, you're not listening. So then you can get confused. But I've found that coaches have really helped me understand language. One, where someone is coming from and how they're sharing it and how it's making me feel. Hence, it has even allowed me to be a better communicator, seeking clarity, like you've said. It's very humbling. So now there's less sting when someone has a personal attack, because I can observe where they're coming from, and I'm just observing that they lack the proper language skills at their level. But without that coach's intervention, it's very easy to catch feelings, it's very easy to isolate, and it's very easy to, can I say, hold yourself back or hide without a framework, like the way you've shared beautifully SBI, to know how to deal with this person. And just like you've amply said right now, when you treat someone with kindness, they comply. So SBI allows that. And you're so right. Like in the Matatu situation, I've ever done that. I just tell the conductor, please, the bass is so loud. inaniumiza. Can you just punguza kidogo, please? And normally, 9.5 times out of 10, they go and reduce the volume.
Yes.
So just how you ask, I agree. And it is just also my observation through inspiration that of what you've shared. A lot of leaders haven't, can I say, haven't had this?
Yes.
From a lot of forums I've been to, a lot of CEOs, a lot of CFOs, what have you. So even when I notice I'm giving feedback about a particular of executing, I can see the amazement of, I haven't seen it that way. Though I notice now I'm not a change management practitioner to help them now with the next step of how they can now shift.
Thank you. Thank you. What I can
Thank you.
add to that is the nuances of genders. There's a way, and you can shoot me for saying this, there's a way we must approach one another. And that's conversation for another day. But I found that what men mean when they say respect and what women mean when they say respect, two different things. How it is lived out, two different things. So we must make that conversation, bring that conversation closer. But that's conversation for another day. Yes, Linda.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, Linda. I want to hear from you.
Now, I think for me, maybe it's looking for insight
Your connection is shaky.
How to best what I usually do because I run can you hear me now?
Yes, now you're clearer.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for that. So I mentioned that I run an online shop and I have several channels where I do my marketing. So I market on Instagram and Facebook, and I have a WhatsApp group where I also highlight some of the items that are on the shop. Now, what I try to do is whenever someone buys something, I usually try to make a follow-up, or as soon as it's delivered, ask them to open the item and confirm that it's delivered in good condition, that it's exactly what they ordered. And after a few days or maybe a week or two, follow up with them to find out how it's working. Are they happy with their purchase? I was just wondering, is there anything more that maybe in terms of feedback that I could do for that kind of scenario?
Online shop. So the other thing you could do is do a simple link for a testimonial, 3-4 questions. If they can fill in, you're able to gauge which customer will give you that one and which one won't. But a 3-4 question online survey with their permission that you can use it online. So, or ask them to give you a review. So go to your page and give you a review of the product. It's one thing for you to be posting, and some of us who get feedback that way post, this is what people said. Do you have a Google My Business profile?
I had created one. I actually had purposed to check on it this week. I know I had created one, but there was some requirement that I didn't have at the moment when I was creating it a few months ago. So yes, I had created a profile for the business, also in anticipation, because one of my plans was to have a website done for the business. So, and I know Google My Business is usually a very good profile if you link it to your website, because now people can actually, it directs traffic to your website or
Actually
to
use
your
it
channels.
as your own, you can use it as your own microsite. So put your products there, and then now when the next thing you do is ask, would you give us a review, and you share the link to your Google My Business.
Oh, perfect. Perfect. That would
Up
actually
until the
really,
point
really,
you
really
have a
work.
website that can function as your website,
Mhm.
because you have your WhatsApp, you do WhatsApp
Awesome.
business, right?
Yes, I do.
So you have your catalog there. So even on your Google My Business, put the link to your WhatsApp catalog there. And then every client, like if you love, they're like, oh,
Awesome.
love.
All right.
Here, please put for us a review.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a really helpful suggestion, Chisubiri. Asante sana.
Karibu sana. Karibu sana. So Vicky asks, what's your take on advice shared commonly by some? Do not take advice from people who are not where you want to be in the light of feedback. I'm a firm believer all feedback can help you, and you just see. There's some people, like has been said before, they're coming from a personal place. Those ones, sure, put them aside, see, hear what they're saying, not how they're saying. There are some people who may not be where you want to go, but could be along the path. So what I believe that statement means is don't give their feedback inappropriate weight. It doesn't, I don't think it means don't listen at all. But if you've never built a business, I will listen to hear what your fears are about building a business to see if I've overcome all of them. I will not take your advice on how to build a business if you've never built one. If you have built 6, this is business number 6. So there are things I know that are in my pocket that I can pull out. And then there's a person who has always wanted to start a business, but fear has kept them on the sidelines. So in that sense, they cannot tell me exactly how to build a business. Vicky, you have a cross-border, you have a business in multiple countries. There are things, those of us who are still in one country cannot tell you about doing business across borders. But there would be things in our conversations, the feedback that you would, maybe something about how a process worked or didn't work, how they interacted with you and what it left them feeling, those you can take. But the ones of, this is how you should run your business, and they're not even in a sub-county, and they're telling you how to run your cross-border business, that I'd take with 15 pinches of salt. Sometimes you listen to hear their fears, like I said earlier, and then just check if you have overcome those fears. Now I'm seeing somebody's like completely laughing about what I said. Like that, it's not in a sub-county. And then I'm trying to tell you how to do continental business. So those ones I wouldn't listen to. But I'm a firm believer that feedback is to be listened to. So let's figure out that you want to say what, and give them too much airtime. Allow people to say their piece when you see, and sometimes people just go off track. Direct them with questions, figure out what it is they're trying to say, grab the information, shut down the conversation gracefully and kindly, and we move on. The thing about feedback, you don't have to allow people to be long-winded and complaining. Sometimes you've got clients who just whine, okay? It is allowed. They're in pain, but direct them back. So you didn't like this part. Okay, what about that part was so bad? Was there anything you liked? Oh my goodness, the taste, the smoothness. So it's just the packaging you didn't like. So do you want bigger or smaller? Or do you want the bottle wider? Or, so then you focus the feedback so that you don't get caught up in an emotional quagmire, which is what many of us get caught up in. So in the view of time, allow me to jump and finish with what we have to say. So quick takeaways. Feedback is a gift. It's a gift. It can be painful, as Andrew has so aptly pointed out, but feedback is a gift. It's how we improve on our products. It's how we help our people grow. Iteration is a mindset. It's not a method. There isn't just one way to iterate, but you cannot iterate without feedback. And finally, our teams will grow when it is safe to fail, reflect, and try again. Remember, everything that does not work is a lesson. It is class time. It is not an opportunity to scream at people and call people names. Everything that does not work is class. And everything that works is wins. So let's collect our wins and learn our lessons so that we are consistently moving on. And finally, the future of the world, of Africa's future, I like to think about Africa's future, that's why I put Africa there, won't be built by chance. We cannot cross our fingers and wish to be a manufacturing, industrialized continent. We cannot cross our fingers and wish to have unicorn businesses. We must understand that unicorns are not going to be too many on our continent unless we shift how we function. So therefore, we must build as courageous leaders who show up, collaborate, and create lasting solutions. The future will not be built by chance, but by courageous leaders who show up, collaborate, and create lasting solutions, because the solutions we're working to create are the ones that our children's children's children will continue to implement. And with that, I say thank you.